Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up a file that, well, honestly, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but in a good way.
Oh, yeah.
It's the kind of discomfort you get when you realize the map you've been using to navigate your life might be missing a giant continent.
That's a very, very apt way to put it.
Hmm.
We are looking at a book that challenges the very geography of reality itself.
We are diving into The Map of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander. Now, before the skeptics in the audience roll their eyes and reach for the skip button, and I know you're out there because I'm usually one of you, we need to talk about the credentials here.
We really do.
Because this isn't a book by a guy selling crystals out of a van in Sedona.
Far from it. And I think that's the scientist's dilemma right at the start. Dr. Eben Alexander isn't just a doctor. He's an academic neurosurgeon.
Right.
We are talking about a man who spent decades at Duke University, Harvard Medical School, Brigham and Women's Hospital. He has authored over 150 chapters and papers for peer-reviewed medical journals.
Wow. Which is just wild. I mean, this is a guy whose entire career was built on the physical brain. He was a hardcore materialist. If you had asked him in, say, 2005 about the soul or the afterlife, what would he have said?
He would have told you, quite politely, that consciousness is a product of the brain. End of story. A phantom. An illusion generated by neurons firing.
So when the brain dies...
The mind dies, the lights go out. He believed that because that's what the science he practiced told him. He didn't just believe in the material world, he operated on it every day. He knew the gray matter inside and out.
Until the universe decided to test that theory in the most brutal way possible.
It really was brutal. In 2008, Alexander's life it imploded. He woke up one morning with severe back pain, and within hours he was completely comatose.
What was it? What happened?
He had contracted a spontaneous case of gram-negative bacterial meningitis.
E. coli, right, in the brain.
Yes. E. coli bacteria. Now, usually that bacteria stays in your gut where it belongs, but somehow it got into his cerebrospinal fluid, and it began to literally eat his brain.
That is a terrifying image.
It is. It attacked his neocortex, the part of the brain that handles sensory perception, conscious thought, language, everything that makes you. Well, you.
The human part of the brain.
The most human part. His doctors at the hospital said his brain was effectively mush. They gave him a virtually zero chance of survival, and if he did survive, he'd be in persistent vegetative state. He was in a deep coma for 7 days.
And this is where the story usually ends, or, turns into a horrible tragedy. But instead, he wakes up and he writes a book called Proof of Heaven.
The big bestseller from 2012.
Right. And that book was basically a travelogue of his near-death experience as NDE.
Right. Proof of Heaven was the what happened. He described waking up in this murky, dark place he calls the earthworm's eye view, then being rescued by a spinning melody of light and ascending to a gateway valley full of life and color, and eventually going to the core of the universe.
It was a massive cultural phenomenon because, again, Harvard neurosurgeon, you can't just dismiss that.
You can't.
But we aren't here to rehash Proof of Heaven. We are diving into the sequel, The Map of Heaven, which came out in 2014. And I have to ask, why write a sequel? If you've already proven heaven exists, at least to yourself, why do you need a map? It feels like writing a sequel to the Bible or something.
It's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of it. The difference lies in the intent. Proof of Heaven was a memoir. It was subjective. This is what I saw.
My story.
My story. But The Map of Heaven is his attempt to be a scientist again. He's trying to answer the so what. He realized that his experience, as wild and personal as it was, wasn't unique. He posits that he didn't hallucinate a new world. He stumbled onto an objective geography that humanity used to know, but we forgot.
So he's claiming this isn't just his map. He's saying, I found an old map in the attic of history, and I'm dusting it off for all of us.
Exactly. The mission of this deep dive, then, is to explore his central thesis, that the modern materialist worldview, the idea that you are just a meat robot driven by neurons, is actually a historical aberration. It's a blip, a glitch in human thinking. He wants to reconnect us to what he calls the golden thread.
The golden thread. I like that imagery. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale.
In a way, it is. But for Alexander, it's the lost connection between ancient mysticism and modern science. He argues that if you really look at the history of philosophy, and even the history of the scientific revolution, you find this thread running through it all.
So we aren't just talking about ghosts and angels here.
No. We are talking about a revisionist history of Western thought, leading us right into the heart of quantum mechanics.
Okay, that is a huge claim. He's basically saying we've been reading our history books wrong. We usually think of history as a march from dumb superstition to smart science. We used to believe in sky gods, now we have iPhones.
A straight line of progress.
Right. But Alexander says we lost something vital along the way. So where does he start this history lesson? Where's the first break in the thread?
He goes way back to the foundations of Western thought, ancient Greece. He sets up a bit of a philosophical cage match between Plato and Aristotle.
The heavyweights. I remember them being grouped together in college. Plato and Aristotle, like they were a package deal.
They are often grouped, but they had fundamentally different approaches to reality. For Alexander, Plato is the hero. Plato is the one holding the golden thread.
Why Plato?
Because Plato believed that the material world, the stuff we can touch, the tables, the chairs, our bodies, is really just a shadow. It's a poor, flickering copy of a much more real, much more substantial reality.
The realm of forms.
The realm of forms, the spiritual realm. And this brings up that concept, mimesis.
And amnesis, it means unforgetting.
You got it, unforgetting. Plato argued that learning isn't about discovering something new that's outside of you. It's about remembering something your soul already knows.
So we're born with all the knowledge of the universe inside us.
According to Plato, yes. He believed our souls come from that realm of forms from heaven, if you will. We know the truth. We know the structure of the universe. But the trauma of being born into a physical body gives us a kind of spiritual amnesia.
That is a trippy concept. It means Einstein didn't invent relativity. He just remembered it.
Precisely. It reframes genius as an act of recovery, not creation. And Alexander uses this to validate the NDE. He argues that when people die and come back with these profound insights, they aren't hallucinating crazy new data. They are experiencing an amnesis. They are remembering what it's like to be home.
But Plato was a philosopher. He was dealing in ideas. Did he have any data to back this up? Or was he just, theorizing in a toga?
Well, Alexander points to a very specific story in Plato's The Republic called the myth of
Okay, I've read The Republic. I definitely remember the cave allegory, shadows on the wall, all that. I do not remember Who was
Was a soldier, a warrior who was killed in a massive battle. His body was collected from the field and placed on a funeral pyre along with the other dead. But for some reason, the fire wasn't lit immediately. 12 days later, while lying on the wood, wakes up. He just sits up, alive and well.
12 days? That's scientifically impossible. But okay, it's a myth. What did he say happened?
He had a report, a travelogue. He described leaving his body and traveling with other souls to a strange place of judgment. He saw beautiful meadows where souls were gathering. He described a cosmic structure called the spindle of necessity that held the entire universe together. He even saw souls choosing their next lives.
Wait a minute. Meadows. Judgment. A life review, basically. That sounds exactly like the NDE reports we hear today.
That is Alexander's entire point. He argues that the myth of is one of the oldest recorded NDEs in Western history. The details, the geography of the Gateway Valley, the sense of a moral order to the cosmos, it matches what people are reporting in hospitals in 2024.
So he's saying that geography is objective. It hasn't changed in 2,400 years because it's a real place.
It's a real place with a consistent landscape. So Plato is the golden thread guy. But then we have Aristotle. And you called this a cage match. What did Aristotle do to break the thread?
Alexander calls it the great forgetting. Aristotle was Plato's student, but he pivoted. He was a genius of observation, an empiricist. He was obsessed with the physical world.
He wanted to categorize everything. Categorize plants, dissect animals, map the stars. He focused his attention on the container, the physical universe, rather than the content, the consciousness or spirit within it.
But isn't that a good thing? I mean, I like antibiotics. I like knowing how my liver works. We need empirical science.
We absolutely do. And Alexander is not anti-science. He's a scientist. But he argues that Aristotle started a slow drift. By focusing entirely on what could be measured with the physical senses, we started to assume that if you couldn't measure it, it didn't exist.
We started studying the box and forgot about the gift inside.
Perfectly put. We began to mistake the container for the reality. And that drift eventually leads us centuries later to the scientific revolution. Newton, Bacon, Galileo.
Right. These are the guys who supposedly kicked God out of the room to make space for math and physics. But Alexander has a different take on them, doesn't he?
This was one of the most surprising parts of the book for me. We are taught that the scientific revolution was a clean break from mysticism. Alexander says, no, look closer. He argues that the fathers of modern science were deeply, deeply embedded in the golden thread.
Give me an example. Isaac Newton. The apple, gravity, the laws of motion. He seems like the ultimate mechanical universe guy, the original materialist.
He seems that way because we only teach his physics. But Newton wrote millions of words in his lifetime, and he wrote significantly more about alchemy, theology, and biblical prophecy than he ever did about physics.
Seriously, the guy who invented calculus was trying to turn lead into gold.
He was obsessed with it and with the nature of God. He didn't see his laws of physics as replacing God. He saw them as the sensorium of the divine.
Whoa. Sensorium. That's a heavy word. What does that even mean?
A sensorium is the total sensory apparatus of an organism. It's how it perceives the world. Newton believed that gravity, this invisible force that connects everything across vast distances, was literally the way God felt the universe. It was God's nervous system.
So he wasn't trying to create a dead mechanical universe.
He was trying to map God's body to understand God's will.
That is beautiful, actually. It completely changes the whole vibe of high school physics class.
And then you have Francis Bacon, the father of the inductive method, basically the scientific method itself. Alexander argues Bacon was driven by a desire to recover Adamic knowledge.
Adamic, like Adam and Eve in the garden.
Exactly. Bacon believed that before the fall, humanity had a perfect innate understanding of nature. We had dominion. He thought that through rigorous scientific inquiry, we could reverse the fall. We could claw our way back to the Garden of Eden. For him, science was a spiritual quest for redemption.
So somewhere along the line, we kept the method, the experiments, the data, the math, but we completely forgot the original motivation.
Exactly. The successors of these men, the ones who came after, they stripped away the spiritual context. They kept the machine, but threw away the operator's manual and the operator. And that left us with the modern view. A dead universe. A clockwork mechanism that just grinds along with no meaning, no purpose, and no pilot.
And that brings us right back to the tragedy of the modern scientist. Like Eben Alexander, before his coma, he was a high priest of that dead universe model. He spent his life fixing the machine.
But then the machine broke in the most profound way possible.
And that leads us to the second section of our deep dive, the gift of vision. Because we have to explain the central paradox here. How can a broken brain see heaven?
Right. This is the part that skeptics hammer on, and for good reason. Alexander's brain was being eaten by bacteria. His neocortex was offline. Logically, he should have been seeing nothing, blackness, or maybe just random static.
How can a damaged brain have a more vivid, more coherent, more real experience than a healthy one? That doesn't make sense.
It seems completely paradoxical. But Alexander leans on a theory that's been around for over a century, called the reducing valve. It comes from thinkers like Henri Bergson and Aldous Huxley.
Okay. The brain as a reducing valve, what does that mean?
The idea is that the brain does not produce consciousness. This is the key. It filters it.
The brain is a filter. Okay. Break that down for me.
Imagine consciousness isn't a light bulb that your brain turns on inside your skull. Imagine consciousness is a massive signal, like the internet, or a huge radio frequency that exists everywhere, all the time. Alexander calls it mind at large.
Okay, so I'm swimming this mind at large right now.
We all are. But if you were fully aware of that cosmic infinite consciousness, you would be utterly useless here on Earth. You'd be so overwhelmed by the bliss and the knowledge of the universe that you wouldn't notice the tiger jumping out of the bushes. You wouldn't bother to find food.
I'd be too busy vibrating with the cosmos to look both ways before crossing the street.
Precisely. So for evolutionary survival, the brain evolved to be a reducing valve. Its primary job is to shut out 99.999% of that consciousness. It reduces the infinite flow to a tiny, manageable trickle that we call reality. It keeps us focused on the here and now so we can survive.
So it's like wearing horse blinders or noise-canceling headphones for the soul.
That's a perfect analogy. The brain is a set of noise-canceling headphones for the soul. But then Alexander gets meningitis. The bacteria attack the neocortex, the filter. They eat holes in the headphones.
And suddenly, the noise-canceling is off.
And the full flood of mind at large rushes in. That is why Alexander argues his NDE felt ultra-real, more real than this reality. He says our waking life is the dream. It's the filtered, dull, black and white version. What he saw in the coma was the raw, unfiltered, high-definition reality.
That is a terrifying thought, but it does explain the intensity people report. But once that filter is broken, how do you navigate that space? He talks about sound being really important.
This is one of the most specific and fascinating details in his map. He describes, starting in this muddy, dark subterranean place, the earthworm's eye view. He was stuck there. But then he was rescued by a sound.
The spinning melody.
A spinning melody of pure white light.
A melody of light. That sounds like synesthesia, where you hear colors or see sounds.
It is. He says that in the higher realms, the senses aren't compartmentalized like they are here.
Yeah.
You don't just hear music, you see it. You don't just see light, you feel it as love.
Hmm.
He describes this spinning melody as a portal. It physically or spiritually lifted him out of the darkness and into the Gateway Valley.
And he talks about vibration as being a kind of coordinate system.
Right. In our world, we navigate by space, left, right, up, down.
Mm.
In that world, he says, you navigate by frequency. To enter the Gateway Valley, you have to resonate at the same vibration as the valley. The melody was like a tuning fork. It tuned his soul to the right station so he could be there.
And again, this isn't just him making this up. He digs up historical corroboration. There's this guy, Emanuel Swedenborg.
Swedenborg is fascinating.
I admit, I had to look this guy up. I knew the name, but I didn't realize he was such a heavyweight.
An absolute giant. He was an 18th century Da Vinci. He was a mining engineer, an astronomer, a physiologist, a member of Swedish parliament. He was the definition of a rational man of science.
And then what happened to him?
In his 50s, he started having spontaneous visions. He claimed he could switch off his reducing valve at will and travel to the spirit world. And he did it for decades.
And what did he see? Did it match up?
He wrote volumes mapping out heaven and hell. And the details match Alexander's to an eerie degree. Swedenborg talked about the life review. He talked about the light being brighter than the sun but not hurting the eyes. He talked about angelic communities organized by love.
So Alexander uses Swedenborg as a data point. He's saying, look, another scientist with a high-functioning brain saw the exact same landscape 300 years ago.
It lends weight to the objective geography argument, doesn't it? If two explorers, centuries apart, come back from an unknown ocean with the same map, you start to think the islands might actually be there.
It really does. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit to section 3, the gift of meaning. Because this is where the rubber meets the road for most of us. The biggest enemy of the spiritual worldview isn't just science in general. It's a specific idea called epiphenomenalism.
Bless you for saying that word.
Thank you. It's a mouthful. Break it down for us. What is that?
Epiphenomenalism is the standard default neuroscientific view of consciousness.
Yeah.
It basically says that consciousness is a byproduct. It's froth.
Froth, like on a latte.
Or like on a steam engine train. Imagine the train. The wheels turning, the pistons pumping. That's the physical brain doing its work. The steam whistle blowing on top. That's consciousness.
Okay.
It makes a noise. It seems significant. But it doesn't pull the train. It doesn't affect the machine in any way. It's just exhaust. A useless, pretty side effect.
That is incredibly depressing. It means my love for my kids, my hopes, my sense of justice, my taste in music, it's all just steam. It's causally useless.
In the strict materialist view, yes, it has no causal power. But Alexander argues that this view makes us blind to the plot.
The plot.
He believes the universe isn't a random machine, it's a story. It has a purpose, a moral trajectory.
Yeah.
And when you view the world through materialism, you dismiss everything that fits that story as coincidence. But when you accept the plot, those coincidences become meaningful data.
And this is where he brings in all the letters he received. After Proof of Heaven came out, he was inundated with thousands of emails from people all over the world.
And he treated them like a scientist would. He treated them as a qualitative data set. He calls it crowdsourced verification. He realized that millions of people have had these glimpses behind the curtain. He classifies them. NDEs, of course, but also deathbed visions, after-death communications.
There's one category that I find really hard to dismiss: shared death experiences.
Oh, those are powerful. Really powerful.
Explain how that works, because it seems to break the whole "it's just a dying brain" argument.
It really does. So imagine a person is dying in a hospital bed. Their brain is shutting down, they're on morphine, whatever. You can explain away anything they see. But sitting next to them is their daughter. Healthy, fully awake, normal brain function.
Right.
At the moment of death, the daughter also sees the room fill with light. Or she sees a mist leave her father's body and float through the ceiling. Or sometimes she even sees the welcoming committee, deceased relatives standing in the corner of the room, smiling.
See, that breaks the hallucination argument. You can say the dying guy is hallucinating because of oxygen deprivation. But the daughter, she's fine. Why is she hallucinating the same thing at the same time?
Alexander argues that this is evidence that the veil, or the reducing valve, isn't just in the brain. It's a property of our reality that thins around the moment of death. The daughter is getting a peek through the curtain because she's in the blast radius of the soul leaving the body.
There was one specific story in the book that really stuck with me, the butterfly story. It's a classic sign from the other side, but the details make it so hard to shrug off.
The specifics are everything in these cases. This is a story about a widower. He was grieving deeply, his wife had passed away, and she had always loved butterflies. It was her symbol.
Oh.
Before she died, she promised him, "I will send you a sign, look for a butterfly."
Which, to be fair, is a little generic. If she said, look for a pigeon, he'd see 50 a day in any city. Butterflies are common.
True. But here is the context. It was the middle of a bleak winter. He was driving his car down a highway. The windows were all rolled up. He was at a low point, crying, talking to her, asking for that sign. And suddenly, a massive butterfly, a monarch, her favorite, lands on his chest.
Inside the car.
Inside the moving vehicle, with the window shut, in the middle of winter.
Okay, that gives me actual goosebumps. How do you even begin to explain that? Did a butterfly teleport into a Honda Civic?
Well, a materialist would have to say, it's a 1 in a billion chance. Maybe it was dormant in the car's heating vent and just woke up.
Yeah.
You can always construct a physical explanation if you try hard enough.
But what's Alexander's take?
He interprets this through the lens of modern physics, specifically quantum entanglement.
Now we're getting sci-fi.
It sounds like it, but it's a real concept. He argues that love creates a bond, a resonance, a quantum connection that death cannot sever. The souls are entangled. He believes the deceased are active. They aren't just sleeping or gone. They are trying to signal us. They can manipulate the environment, maybe even at a quantum level, to nudge probabilities, to put that butterfly in that car at that exact moment.
So it wasn't a magic trick. It was a manipulation of probability by a consciousness that still exists and still cares.
Exactly. It's the gift of meaning. It's the universe telling us we aren't alone and that our connections matter more than anything.
This leads perfectly into what I think is the narrative centerpiece of the book. Section 4, the gift of strength. Alexander uses a fable here that I'd never heard before, but it's sticky. It stays with you. It's the story of the tiger and the goat.
Oh, I love this story. It's an ancient Indian fable, often attributed to the mystic Ramakrishna. It perfectly encapsulates Alexander's view on our true identity.
Tell this story. I want our listeners to really visualize this.
Okay. Imagine a pregnant tigress. She's starving. She attacks a herd of goats, but the exertion of the hunt is too much for her. She dies while giving birth to her cub. So you have this newborn tiger cub, an orphan, alone in a field of goats.
And the goats, being fundamentally kind creatures, decide to adopt him.
Right. They take him in. So the tiger is raised by goats. He grows up thinking he is a goat. He eats grass, which of course ruins his digestion and makes him weak and sickly. He learns to bleat.
A tiger bleeding?
A tiger bleeding. He is terrified of predators. He is a tiger who believes he is prey. He lives his life in fear, huddles in the middle of the herd for safety.
That is such a hilarious and tragic image.
It is. But then, one day, a massive male tiger attacks the herd. The goats all scatter in terror. But the goat tiger freezes. He's confused. The big male tiger bounds up to him and just stops. He looks at this pathetic, bleeding cub and says, "What on earth are you doing? Why are you bleeding? Why are you eating grass?"
And the cub is just shaking, going, "Don't eat me, I'm just a goat."
Exactly. The big tiger gets frustrated. He grabs the cub by the scruff of the neck and drags him to a nearby pond. He forces the cub to look at his reflection in the still water. He puts his own face next to the cub's and says, "Look, you have my face. You have stripes. You are not a goat. You are like me."
The moment of truth.
But the cub still doesn't get it. The conditioning is too deep. So the big tiger goes further. He kills a fresh kill, a deer, and he brings back a piece of raw meat and forces it into the cub's mouth.
The tough love approach.
Extremely tough love. The cub gags at first. It's disgusting to him. But as the meat hits his system, as the protein hits his blood, something ancient and dormant wakes up inside him. His biology ignites. He feels a strength he's never known. And finally, the cub rears back his head, and it's not a bleat that comes out. It's a massive, ground-shaking roar.
He remembers who he is.
He sheds the goat identity. He becomes the tiger.
And in this metaphor, let me guess, we are the goats, or we think we are.
We are the tigers who have been raised to believe we are goats. The goat identity is our physical body. It's the ego. It's the part of us that is terrified of death, the part that thinks we are small, fragile, and destined to rot.
And our culture is the goat herd.
Our culture, our materialist container culture, teaches us to be goats. It teaches us to be fearful consumers. It tells us we are nothing more than our bodies. But we are tigers. We are immortal spiritual beings. We've just been eating the grass of materialism for so long that we've made ourselves sick.
And the NDE, or a deep spiritual awakening.
That's the big male tiger. It's the force that drags you to the reflection and makes you look at your true face.
So the gift of strength is the courage to roar.
Yes, it's the courage to accept your own immortality. And think about it. If you know you are a tiger, if you know deep in your bones that you are an immortal being of light and love, you live your life completely differently. You don't fear death. You take risks for love. You speak your truth. You don't huddle in the herd.
But Alexander also warns about the other side of this, right? He's not saying we should all become religious zealots.
No, not at all. He advocates for the middle way. He says true strength is standing between the rigid dogmas of fundamentalist religion and the empty dogmas of fundamentalist materialism. Both are based on control. Both are based on fear. The tiger doesn't need dogma. The tiger just is.
That is powerful. I'm going to be thinking about that bleeding tiger all week. Let's move to section 5, the gifts of joy and hope. Alexander makes a distinction here that I think is really helpful. The difference between happiness and joy.
Yes.
Because we use those words interchangeably, but he says they're totally different species of emotion.
They are. Happiness, for Alexander, is reactive. It's conditional. It's external. I got a promotion, so I'm happy. I ate a great pizza, so I'm happy. It depends entirely on earthly circumstances. If the pizza falls on the floor, the happiness is gone.
Right. Happiness is fragile and fleeting.
Exactly. But joy is different. Alexander argues that joy is the fundamental background radiation of the universe. When he went to the core, that deepest inky darkness filled with the presence of God or Om, he felt this overwhelming joy. It wasn't an emotion he was having. It was what the universe was literally made of.
So even if your life is falling apart on the surface, even if you're sick or grieving, that joy is still there underneath it all.
It's the bedrock.
Yeah.
It's unconditional. You can tap into it even in the worst pain, because it doesn't depend on the pain going away. It's the fabric of reality itself.
Speaking of pain, he brings in another case study here that is just incredibly intense, the story of Natalie Sudman.
This story kept me up at night. Natalie Sudman was an archaeologist, a civilian contractor working for the army in Iraq. She was traveling in a vehicle that was hit by a roadside bomb, an IED.
A horrific situation.
Truly, the truck was blown apart. But her account of what happened in the split second of the explosion was so fascinating. She describes popping out of her body in the blink of an eye.
So she had an NDE.
A very active one. She didn't feel pain. She said she instantly entered what she calls a rest environment.
While the bomb was exploding.
In the milliseconds between the blast and the shrapnel hitting her body, yes. She stepped out of linear time. She described standing on a stage, almost like a lecture hall, before a council of beings. They weren't emotional. They were calm, efficient, almost like engineers.
And what did they do?
They reviewed her life plan with her. They showed her the blueprint. But here's the kicker. She helped repair her own astral body. It wasn't just happening to her. She was an active participant. And then she and the council decided that her work wasn't done yet. She chose to return to her body.
She chose to go back into a body that had just been blown up, a body with shrapnel in the brain and collapsed lungs and massive internal injuries.
Yes, because she had more work to do on Earth. Alexander uses this to highlight the agency of the soul. We aren't just victims of fate. We are active participants in our journey. The afterlife isn't just sitting on a cloud playing a harp. It's a place of action, decision, and construction.
That completely changes the gift of hope. It's not just hope that it's nice over there. It's hope that we have control, that we are co-creators of our reality even after death.
Precisely. We are powerful beings.
Now, we have to address the elephant in the room, or maybe the particle in the room. Physics. Alexander tries to ground all of this in quantum mechanics.
He does.
And I have to be the skeptic here for a second. Every New Age book I've ever read tries to use quantum physics to explain magic. It's become a buzzword for spooky stuff. Does Alexander actually know what he's talking about, or is this just quantum woo?
It's a very fair critique. And yes, the word quantum is often abused. But Alexander focuses on a very specific, very real, and very weird puzzle in physics called the measurement problem.
Okay, walk us through it. Pretend I'm 5, or maybe 10, but a smart 10.
Okay, so there's a famous experiment called the double slit experiment. You fire tiny subatomic particles like electrons at a barrier with 2 vertical slits in it. Behind the barrier is a screen that records where the electrons land.
Got it. Shooting marbles through holes in a fence.
If they were marbles, you'd get 2 solid bands of hits on the back screen. 2 lines directly behind the slits. Simple. But when you fire electrons, you don't get two lines. You get an interference pattern. Lots and lots of lines, like when ripples in a pond overlap.
So the electron is acting like a wave, not a particle.
Exactly. It's acting like a wave of probability. It's going through both slits at the same time, interfering with itself, and hitting the screen in many places at once.
Okay, so matter is waves. Weird, but I can accept that. What's the problem?
Here's where it gets spooky. Physicists said, that's weird. Let's put a little camera sensor right by the slits to see which slit the electron actually goes through.
They wanted to catch it in the act.
Right. But the moment they turned on the sensor, the moment they observed which path the electron took, it stopped acting like a wave. It went back to acting like a marble. It only went through one slit. The interference pattern completely disappeared.
Wait, just by looking at it, they changed how it behaved.
Yes. The act of observation collapsed the wave function. This freaked physicists out. It implies that the particle doesn't have a defined location in reality until a consciousness observes it. Until it's measured, it's just a smear of potential.
That sounds impossible. That can't be right.
But it's been verified thousands of times. It's the foundational mystery of quantum mechanics. Alexander and many physicists like Max Planck interpret this to mean that consciousness is fundamental. Matter doesn't create consciousness. Consciousness creates matter.
He quotes Max Planck, right, the father of quantum theory.
Yes. Planck said, quote, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." Alexander argues that this is the scientific validation of the golden thread of what Plato was saying 2,400 years ago.
It's a new Copernican revolution.
Exactly. Copernicus showed us that the Earth isn't the center of the solar system. The sun is. Alexander says we are now realizing that the physical universe isn't the center of reality. Consciousness is the sun. The physical world is just a planet orbiting it.
So if consciousness creates the brain, then the brain dying doesn't kill consciousness, because the consciousness was there first. The creator can't be killed by the destruction of its creation.
That is the logical conclusion. You don't die when your radio breaks. The signal, the broadcast, continues.
We've covered a massive amount of ground. History, brain biology, NDEs, quantum physics. But Alexander realizes something important at the end of the book. Most of us aren't going to get meningitis, thank God.
Right.
And most of us aren't quantum physicists. So how do we use this map in our daily lives? Section 6 is about practical application.
Alexander is very clear. Please do not try to get meningitis to learn this. He had to learn the hard way so the rest of us could learn the easy way. He suggests that since the map is internal, since it's anamnesis, or remembering, we can access it through technology and ancient practices.
He talks about sound technology. This goes back to that spinning melody he heard in his NDE.
Yes. He's a big proponent of using things like binaural beats or hemispheric synchronization.
What are those? It sounds complicated.
And it's actually very simple audio technology. You put on headphones. In your left ear, you play a tone at, say, 100 hertz. In your right ear, you play a slightly different tone, say 104 hertz. Your brain hears the difference of 4 hertz and starts to resonate at that frequency. It synchronizes the two hemispheres of the brain.
It's like manually tuning your brain radio to a different station.
Exactly. He believes this technology can help us mechanically and safely bypass the reducing valve. It allows you to enter those deep states of consciousness, meditative states, without having to spend 30 years sitting in a cave in Tibet. It's a shortcut to quieting the filter.
And he also talks about prayer, specifically centering prayer.
This goes right back to the tiger and the goat. Our goat mind, the ego, the chatter, the worry about bills and deadlines, is constantly making noise. It's bleeding all day long.
Easier said than done. My goat is very loud.
Everyone's is. It takes practice. But the goal of centering prayer is simply to create enough silence for the tiger, your deeper self to surface. The gift of application is the realization that the map isn't out there in the sky. It's in here. The door to heaven is inside you. You just have to clear away all the clutter to find the doorknob.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out from all these details, what's the big picture here?
We've gone from Plato's golden thread to the neural filter of the brain, through the Gateway Valley, and down into the spooky world of the measurement problem. Alexander's ultimate argument, I think, is that we're living in a time of reunification.
Reunification.
Yes. For the last 400 years, science and spirituality have been divorced. They've been living in separate houses, fighting. Science said, show me the data, and spirit said, feel the meaning. Alexander is saying the data is the meaning. The split that started with Aristotle is finally starting to heal.
It's a hopeful vision. It suggests that science and spirituality aren't enemies. They are just two different teams exploring the same vast territory. One has a telescope, the other has a compass, but they are looking at the same stars.
Precisely. They are both trying to understand the content, not just measure the container.
I want to leave our listeners with a final thought that really stuck with me from the book. It's about that tiger and the goat.
It's the essential question, isn't it?
If Alexander is right, if the material world is just the container, and our consciousness, our soul, is the content, then how much of our lives are we spending decorating the box?
That hits home. Hard.
We obsess over our bodies, our houses, our bank accounts, our resumes, the container. We polish the box, we paint the box, we put the box on a pedestal. But are we neglecting the thing inside? Are we starving the tiger while we polish the bars of its cage?
And to add to that, I would challenge the listener to look for the plot. Alexander says we are blind to it because we are trained to see randomness. So this week, just as an experiment, look at the coincidences in your life. Look at the things you usually dismiss as chance. Ask yourself, was that a signal? Was that a nudge? Is there a thread you've been ignoring?
The golden thread might be tugging on your sleeve right now.
It just might be.
That's a wrap for this deep dive into the map of heaven. Whether you are a hardened skeptic or a true believer, you have to admit it's a much bigger map than we usually look at. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next dive.
Keep roaring.